The ritual always begins in the same terrified manner, with a trembling hand reaching out to dim the bathroom lights until the room is swallowed by darkness. A single candle usually flickers on the vanity, casting long dancing shadows that distort the familiar reflection in the glass into something unrecognizable and sinister. The participant stands alone or perhaps flanked by giggling yet nervous friends and stares intensely into their own pupils while chanting the name Bloody Mary 3 times or more. It is a rite of passage for American youth, a test of bravery performed at sleepovers and during Halloween parties across the nation. But beneath the adrenaline rush of this childhood game lies a tangled web of history and folklore that stretches back centuries. The face they hope to see or fear to see is not merely a figment of imagination, but a composite of tragic historical figures. Most children who engage in this terrifying game do not understand the historical weight behind the name they chant so recklessly in the dark. The legend suggests that summoning this spirit will result in a vengeful ghost scratching their eyes out or dragging them through the mirror into a different dimension. The fear is palpable and the adrenaline spike is real, but the origins of the entity known as Bloody Mary are far more complex than a simple campfire ghost story. Folklore historians and psychologists have spent decades unraveling the threads of this urban legend. They have found that the story is an amalgamation of several real women from history who suffered immense pain and inflicted terrible violence during their lifetimes. The mirror serves not just as a tool for a scare, but as a portal to the bloody history of the past. The first and most prominent candidate for the historical identity of Bloody Mary is Queen Mary, the first of England who reigned during the tumultuous middle of the 16th century. Mary Tudor was the daughter of King Henry VIII and his first wife Catherine of Aragon. Her early life was marked by rejection and instability, as her father cast aside her mother in favor of Anne Boleyn. Mary was declared illegitimate and stripped of her title of princess, which sowed seeds of bitterness and resentment that would bloom later in her life. She was a staunch Catholic in a country that her father had forcibly converted to Protestantism. This religious conflict would define her entire existence and eventually earn her the gruesome nickname that children still whisper into mirrors 500 years later. When Mary Tudor finally ascended to the throne in the year 1553, she was determined to restore England to the Roman Catholic Church by any means necessary. Her methods were brutal and uncompromising, as she viewed Protestantism not just as a political threat, but as a heresy that endangered the souls of her subjects. During her relatively short 5-year reign, she ordered the execution of hundreds of Protestants who refused to convert. These unfortunates were burned at the stake in public spectacles, intended to terrify the population into submission. The smoke from these fires hung heavy over English towns, and the screams of the dying cemented her reputation. History books written by her Protestant successors branded her as Bloody Mary, a tyrant with blood on her hands. However, the connection between Queen Mary I and the mirror ritual goes deeper than just her violent persecution of religious dissenters. The legend often involves the spirit searching for her lost child or stealing a baby from the summoner. This specific detail mirrors the personal tragedy of Mary Tudor, who desperately wanted an heir to secure a Catholic succession for England. She experienced 2 phantom pregnancies during her marriage to King Philip II of Spain. In both instances, she exhibited all the physical signs of pregnancy, including a swollen abdomen and morning sickness. The doctors and courtiers believed she was carrying the future king, but as the months passed, no child arrived. The humiliation was absolute, and the heartbreak devastated her mental and physical health. The first phantom pregnancy occurred in the year 1555, and the entire kingdom waited with bated breath for the birth of an heir. Nursery staff were hired, and a cradle was prepared, but the due date came and went with no labor pains. Mary sat in her chamber waiting for a child that did not exist, while rumors swirled outside the palace walls. Her abdomen eventually receded, and she was left with nothing but shame and a deep depression. This happened again years later, near the end of her life. The image of a mad queen wandering the halls of her palace, obsessed with the ghost of a child, she never had aligns perfectly with the folklore of the mirror witch, who demands the return of her baby. While Mary Tudor is the primary historical suspect, she is not the only royal figure attached to the legend. Mary Stuart, known to history as Mary Queen of Scots, is often conflated with the English Queen due to their shared name and tragic endings. Mary Stuart was a rival to Elizabeth I and lived a life defined by political intrigue, murder plots, and imprisonment. She was accused of conspiring to assassinate Elizabeth to take the English throne for herself. After 19 years of captivity, she was finally sentenced to death. Her execution at Fotheringhay Castle is one of the most gruesome events in royal history and provides plenty of fuel for a vengeful ghost story. The execution of Mary Queen of Scots was a botched and bloody affair that traumatized all who witnessed it. The executioner was nervous, and his first swing of the axe failed to sever her neck, merely burying the blade in the back of her head. Mary reportedly cried out in agony before the second blow fell. Even then, it took a third sawing motion to finally separate her head from her body. When the executioner lifted her head to show the crowd, he grabbed it by her hair, but it turned out to be a wig. The head fell to the floor, rolling away and revealing her short gray hair. This horrific scene of a disembodied head and a botched beheading fits the macabre nature of the Bloody Mary ritual, where the spirit is often said to be headless or bleeding from the neck. Another historical figure often woven into the tapestry of this legend is the infamous Countess Elizabeth Bathory of Hungary. Although her name was not Mary, the sheer scale of her alleged crimes has caused her to bleed into the folklore of violent female spirits. Living in the late 16th and early 17th centuries, Bathory is recognized by the Guinness World Records as the most prolific female murderer in history. Rumors swirled that she bathed in the blood of young virgins to maintain her youthful appearance. While historians debate the validity of the blood bath, claims the accusations of her torturing and killing hundreds of servant girls are well documented in the court records of the time. The connection between Elizabeth Bathory and the mirror ritual lies in the theme of vanity and the obsession with appearance. The modern ritual is performed in front of a mirror, which is the ultimate symbol of vanity. Bathory was said to be terrified of aging and death, willing to commit unspeakable atrocities to preserve her beauty. In the urban legend, the spirit in the mirror often attacks the face of the summoner, scratching their eyes or disfiguring them. This reflects the punishment for vanity and the twisted desire of the Countess to consume the youth of others. The conflation of Bathory with the Marys of history creates a super predator of folklore, a woman who is both a queen and a monster. Moving away from royalty, there is a more local American origin for the legend involving a woman named Mary Worth. In some versions of the ritual, the chant is actually Mary Worth rather than Bloody Mary. This figure is often described as a witch who lived in Illinois or Massachusetts during the 19th century. According to local lore, Mary Worth was a woman who dabbled in the dark arts and used mirrors to scry the future or curse her neighbors. She was eventually caught by the townspeople and executed either by burning or hanging. Her spirit is said to be trapped within the reflective glass, waiting for someone to call her name, so she can unleash her vengeance upon the living. The confusion between these various historical figures highlights how folklore evolves over time. Oral traditions act like a game of telephone, where details are swapped and embellished with each retelling. A teenager at a slumber party in the 1970s might combine the name of the British Queen with the crimes of the Hungarian Countess and the setting of the Salem witch trials. The result is a composite monster that embodies the collective cultural fears regarding powerful women and the unknown. The name Bloody Mary becomes a catch-all term for a terrifying female entity that resides in the liminal space between the living world and the dead. Folklore historian Janet Langlois published a seminal essay in the year 1978 titled Mary Wales, I Believe in You, which analyzed the legend in depth. She noted that the ritual often serves as a way for children to express anxieties about maturation and the changes in their own bodies. The mirror is the place where we examine ourselves, and for a pubescent child, that reflection is constantly changing. Summoning a bloody woman who might scratch or disfigure that reflection is a manifestation of the fear of growing up. The ritual allows them to confront these fears in a controlled environment, surrounded by peers who are experiencing the same anxieties. Interestingly, the use of mirrors for divination, known as cataptromancy, predates the scary stories of the 20th century. In the 18th and 19th centuries, there was a Halloween tradition where young women would walk backward up a staircase while holding a candle and a hand mirror. The goal was not to summon a ghost, but to see the face of their future husband in the glass. However, the superstition also held a dark warning. If the woman saw a skull instead of a handsome face, it meant she was destined to die before she could marry. This parlor game is the direct ancestor of the Bloody Mary ritual, shifting from a romantic divination to a horror endurance test. The transition from the husband-finding ritual to the ghost-summoning ritual occurred rapidly during the early 20th century. As Halloween became more commercialized and focused on costumes and candy, the old parlor games for young adults fell out of fashion. The mirror game survived, but it mutated. The playful, spooky element hardened into something more visceral and terrifying. Instead of looking for love, children began looking for death. The shift reflects a change in societal fears, where the concern over spinsterhood was replaced by a fascination with the macabre and the supernatural entities popularized by cinema and pulp fiction. While history and folklore explain the narrative of Bloody Mary, science offers a compelling explanation for the visual phenomenon itself. The experience of seeing a monster in the mirror is not necessarily paranormal, but rather a trick of the human brain. This phenomenon is known as the Troxler Effect, named after the Swiss physician Ignaz Paul Vital Troxler, who discovered it in the year 1804. The effect occurs when a person stares at a fixed point for a prolonged period. The neurons in the visual system adapt to the unchanging stimuli and begin to fade out the peripheral details. The brain then attempts to fill in the missing information, often creating hallucinations. In the context of the Bloody Mary ritual, the Troxler effect is amplified by the low lighting conditions. The flickering candle creates dynamic shadows that the brain struggles to interpret. As the participant stares into their own eyes, the features of their face may appear to melt, distort, or disappear entirely. The brain panics and projects imagery to make sense of the visual noise. Because the participant is already primed with fear and expecting to see a monster, the brain obliges by constructing a terrifying face out of the shadows and the distorted reflection. The monster in the mirror is effectively a selfie of the summoner's own fear. A study conducted by Italian psychologist Giovanni Caputo in the year 2010 specifically investigated this strange face illusion. He asked 50 participants to stare into a mirror in a dimly lit room for 10 minutes. The results were striking. 66% of the participants reported seeing huge deformations of their own face. 18% saw a parent with changed traits, of whom 8% were still alive, and 10% were deceased. 28% saw an archetypal person such as an old woman or a child. Perhaps most disturbingly, 48% reported seeing fantastical and monstrous beings. Caputo concluded that this is a consequence of the visual system returning to a primitive state when deprived of clear data. The psychological component of the ritual extends beyond just the visual cortex. It is also a study in suggestion and group dynamics. When performed at a sleepover, the social pressure to see something is immense. If one child screams and claims to see blood dripping down the glass, the others are primed to see it too. This creates a contagion of fear, where the collective imagination overrides reality. The ritual becomes a shared hallucination, reinforced by the desperate need to belong to the group and not appear cowardly. The skepticism of the individual is washed away by the conviction of the crowd. Variations of the mirror witch legend exist in cultures all around the world, proving that the fear of reflections is universal. In Japan, there is the legend of Hanako, saying a spirit of a young girl who haunts school bathrooms. Like Bloody Mary, she is summoned by knocking on a stall door and calling her name. If she answers, she might drag the student into the toilet. While the setting is slightly different, the core elements are the same. It involves a bathroom alone ritual and a female spirit who punishes those who disturb her. These legends serve as cautionary tales and tests of courage for school children across different continents. In the Latin American community, the legend of La Llorona, or the Weeping Woman, sometimes intersects with the mirror ritual. La Llorona is said to be a woman who drowned her children in a river and now wanders the earth weeping and looking for them. While typically an outdoor apparition encountered near water, some modern urban legends suggest she can be summoned in a mirror similar to Bloody Mary. This crossover demonstrates how fluid these myths are, adapting to fit the specific cultural fears and storytelling traditions of the community. The mirror acts as a universal canvas upon which any ghost story can be painted. The persistence of the Bloody Mary legend in the digital age is a testament to its power. In an era of smartphones and high-speed internet, where information is at our fingertips, the primitive fear of the dark and the unknown remains. YouTube videos and TikTok challenges featuring people attempting the ritual garner millions of views. The medium has changed, but the message is the same. We are fascinated by the idea that there is a world just beyond the glass, a world that is watching us back. The ritual has evolved from a sleepover game to a viral content genre, ensuring its survival for another generation. The horror genre in film and literature has also played a massive role in cementing Bloody Mary in the public consciousness. The urban legend was immortalized in the 1992 film Candyman, which adapted the summoning ritual for a new monster. The television show Supernatural featured Bloody Mary in its very first season, introducing the lore to millions of viewers. These media depictions standardize the rules of the ritual. They tell us exactly how many times to chant the name and what the consequences will be. They feed the folklore loop, inspiring new waves of children to turn off the lights and test their luck. Despite the scientific explanations of the Troxler Effect and the historical debunking of the myths, the ritual retains its ability to terrify. There is something primal about staring into one's own eyes in the dark. It forces a confrontation with the self that is uncomfortable and disorienting. The face we see in the mirror is our identity, but in the dark it becomes a stranger. The Bloody Mary ritual exploits this fragility of self-perception. It suggests that our identity is not fixed, and that something else, something ancient and angry, could take our place. The bathroom setting itself is crucial to the effectiveness of the ritual. The bathroom is a place of vulnerability and privacy. It is where we are naked, where we groom, and where we confront our physical imperfections. To introduce a supernatural threat into this sanctuary violates the safety of the home. The lock on the door, which usually keeps intruders out, becomes a trap that keeps the horror in. The small enclosed space amplifies the feeling of claustrophobia and helplessness, making the potential appearance of a spirit even more terrifying. The legend also taps into the deep-seated societal guilt regarding the treatment of women throughout history. Whether it is the demonization of Mary Tudor, the execution of Mary Queen of Scots, or the witch trials of Mary Worth, the stories are all about women who were punished violently. The ritual brings these persecuted figures back as powerful, vengeful entities. In a twisted way, the ghost in the mirror is reclaiming the power that was stripped from her in life. She is no longer the victim, she is the monster, and she demands to be acknowledged. Ultimately, the Bloody Mary ritual is a masterclass in interactive storytelling. Unlike a horror movie, where the viewer is passive, the ritual requires participation. The summoner is the director, the protagonist, and the victim all at once. They set the stage, they recite the script, and they wait for the climax. This agency makes the fear personal. If something happens, it is because they invited it. This element of invitation is what makes the legend so enduring. It is not a random haunting. It is a transaction between the living and the dead, initiated by the living. As we look back at the origins of this macabre game, we see a reflection of human history itself. We see the religious wars of the Tudor era, the political executions of the Elizabethan age, and the witch hunts of early America. We see the evolution of psychology and our understanding of how the brain processes fear. The Bloody Mary ritual is a cultural artifact that carries the DNA of centuries of trauma and superstition. It is a living ghost story that refuses to die, fed by the curiosity and bravery of each new generation. So the next time you find yourself in a bathroom with a flickering candle and a mirror, consider the weight of the names you might whisper. You are not just playing a game, you are invoking the memory of queens and outcasts who met violent ends. You are testing the limits of your own perception and inviting the chaos of the unknown into your safe space. Whether you believe in the ghost or the science, the result is the same. You will stare into the abyss, and for a split second, the abyss will stare back with a face that is both yours and something entirely other. The mirror remains one of the most mysterious objects in our daily lives. It is a surface of truth, but also of deception. The Bloody Mary ritual will likely continue to evolve, taking on new names and new forms as society changes. But the core experience will remain unchanged. The fear of the dark, the fear of the reflection, and the thrill of the summon. It is a reminder that no matter how modern we become, we are still afraid of what might be lurking just behind the glass, waiting for an invitation to break through.